All right, so thank you for checking out these last three secrets from the talk that you heard, the not very nice email secrets. As I was saying, depending on where you heard me give the talk, either at AWAI or Brian Kurtz's Titans Mastermind, I was saying that originally there were seven, but I only really had time to do four. And so I decided I would just put these up on a private YouTube link, and anyone who wants to see it, these last three can, and so we're here. So 5 through 7. We went through the first four already. These are the last three, and here we go. Number 5, not very nice email secret, is to banish the N word. And when I say the N word, I'm talking about a whole different thing than what probably people think when they hear that word. I am talking about neediness. Neediness is like catfish bait. I call it the catfish bait of persuasion, actually. And by eliminating this from all your emails, you're not going to sound very nice necessarily. Now, you're not going to sound mean either. But a lot of people become very needy in their marketing. This is rampant right now, especially. And because of that neediness, they come out, they're just too nice. And that niceness is not doing them any favors. It's not doing their customers any favors. It's not doing their clients any favors. And the thing about neediness that throws a lot of people off is it's so subtle and insidious that you probably don't even know you're doing it. Yet I would bet, after we go through this part of this video, that if you were to go through all your emails, your sales copy, and everything else, you would find a lot of instances where you were being needy. And again, it's like that catfish bait. I don't know if you've ever smelled catfish bait before, but it's probably the most hideous thing that you'll ever smell. For example, back in college, we would play pranks on each other. Some of us by smearing catfish, like breaking into someone's room and then smearing catfish bait all over the place, the walls and everything. You cannot get that smell out. It is the most disgusting thing. Put it this way. Let's say you had $1 million closet in your house. And when I say $1 million closet, I mean you have $1 million worth of very high-end clothing, high-end jewelry, high-end shoes, high-end whatever that's in this closet. Very, very high-end stuff, $1 million worth. Well, no matter how sparkling great all those things are, if I was to go in there and just smear some catfish bait on the walls and the ceiling and the floor and not even touch the clothing or the merchandise in there, it would render everything in there repulsive just because of that catfish bait. And that is what neediness does to your advertising. You could be the best copywriter in the world. You could write the best emails in the world. You could be all of that. You have the best offer in the world. But if you're coming off needy, you are automatically turning some people away. So if you don't want to take my word for it, let's consult three wise men who might know better than I do. Granted. First is the great Dan Kennedy. Now, something he said in his 7-Figure Academy course, which is a great course, by the way, at gkic.com. You can get it. It's easier to get money from people when they think you don't need their money than it is if they have any sense at all that you do need it. This spans not just buying things, but also if you're trying to get someone's vote, trying to get a date with someone, whatever it is, neediness will turn them off. You're trying to get a job, whatever, you come off needy in that interview, you're just going to repulse them. You become catfish bait, basically. Or Robert Greene. He's the author of The 48 Laws of Power, if you've ever read that book. And he says in there, the more interest you show, the more you repel the object of your desire. Uncontrollable desire makes you seem weak, unworthy, pathetic. Again, catfish bait. It is the catfish bait of persuasion, neediness. And then finally, if you've ever seen the movie The Tao of Steve, which is kind of a obscure movie from Brown, I think it came out in 2000, almost 20 years ago. And it's basically about this overweight kind of underachieving guy who's just, he's kind of a slob and everything, and yet he still gets lots of girls that just want to be with him all the time. And the reason it works for him is because he has this thing he calls the Tao of Steve. It's 3 rules. And the first part of the Tao of Steve is to be desireless. And the reason that works is because if you let go of all desire, you suddenly are not needy. You can't be needy for something you don't desire. So you just let it go. And that was part of his, there's 2 other parts to his thing. It's actually a pretty good movie if you want to learn a way of persuading people. I've used it actually in my own marketing. I even did an email players issue about this movie once. The first half of it. Second half kind of is pointless, but for purposes here at least. But the first one is to be desireless. The second one is to be worthy, to do something, or be excellent actually, do something excellent in her presence to demonstrate your worthiness. And then the third rule is to be gone, which is anti-neediness. This is law of the jungle. We pursue that which retreats from us. Well, we're just going to focus on the desireless part here. But that is the key here, is just let go of all your desire for something. You don't need that sale. You don't need that client. You don't need any of that stuff. That's why I put the picture of Gollum up there at first. You know, people get a client and suddenly they just drop everything and they revolve around that client and they become very needy with that client. And then there's wondering why that client lets them go. It's because of neediness. It's catfish bait. So what are some neediness tells? Well, there's probably literally millions of neediness tells that people do, but here are some pretty common ones that people do in their emails. And like I said, if you were to go through all your emails, henceforth, and actively look for neediness tells, and then just remove them from the emails. If all you did was remove the neediness tells from your emails, it's like advanced email game, advanced persuasion game, advanced selling game. So for example, bragging. You'll see people brag on their emails. You know, and they probably do it because they're seeing other people do it. Or maybe they saw someone like, for example, Gary Halbert, who was able to get away with this, by the way, to his own list. But if you ever looked at his ads and newspapers and all that to cold people, he never did any of that bragging because it doesn't work. It's neediness. But to your own people, you can probably get away with this at a certain point. I certainly can't, and most people can't. But, you know, if you become a Gary Halbert level that to your audience, fine. But for most people, for us normal humans, bragging is something that it exudes neediness. When you're out there pounding your chest about how you give zero fucks or whatever it is that people say, actually that makes you do care, or you wouldn't have to say it. Or bragging about all the money you make, or bragging about your lifestyle, all this stuff. There's a way to sell that sort of thing without bragging. If you ever seen the cartoon Underdog, they used to have this a cartoon within the cartoon called Commander McBrag, and he was like, you know, it was fun to watch, but the guy was annoying. He's always bragging. So just get rid of all bragging, and I bet you would see your response and sales go up. Telling people they, quote, need to buy from you. This is the worst thing you can do, is say, you need this. No, they don't. Most people, if you say that they need X, Y, Z, their first thought is, no, I don't. Or you've created an objection. At worst, they think you're an idiot, and at best, you've just created an objection you have to deal with. Now, why do I need it? Usually what that means is if you find yourself saying you need to buy this, you are projecting your neediness onto them. You actually need their sale, is what you're saying. And they sense this. Now, none of this is conscious. This is an unconscious thing. But that's why I say get rid of all neediness from your emails, including telling them they need to buy. And, it'll take care of a lot of problems. You don't need their sale. And I'll talk more about that in a second. It's a whole different thing. But if you demonstrate you don't need what they have, you're going to be far more persuasive. Supplicating is another thing. You know, bending over backwards just to show like how great you are and all this and how nice you are and all these. It's just all it does is do the opposite. It makes people lose respect for you. It makes people lose respect for what you're selling or what your client is selling. Don't supplicate. Pedestalizing is another thing. When you put somebody or something on a pedestal, all that person can do is look down on you. It's not conscious, it's not malicious, it's not something they do on purpose, but you've given them no choice but to look down on you. This is why doing things like guru worship and all that works against you. You know, they don't want anything to do with it. Don't pedestalize. When people are being pedestalized, they like it for about 5 minutes, and then they start to wonder what's wrong with you. And this carries over into your emails and your other sales copy too. Don't pedestalize. Don't pedestalize people. Don't pedestalize a client. Believe me, it's not going to help you. Going out of your way not to offend people. Now, I'm not saying you should go out of your way to offend people. I suppose you could if you wanted to. But trying to play twister with the facts to not offend some person in your audience is like one of the most needy things you can do. It means you need people to like you so much. Well, here's something to think about. Far better than being liked is being respected. And no one's going to respect you if you're bragging. They're not going to respect you if you're supplicating or pedestalizing. And they're not going to respect you if you go out of your way and take these huge leaps just to not offend somebody. There's always going to be people who get offended no matter what you do. You wake up in the morning, you're offending somebody. So it's pointless to live your life like that. And again, I'm not saying go out of your way to do it, but to sit there to go out of your way not to do it, because you might offend one person who's not even going to buy from you, it's neediness, and you need to get rid of that. Avoiding controversy. Controversial emails are some of the best you can write, though if you do it right and you understand how to use controversy, it can be one of the most powerful selling tools you ever use for email. But avoiding it altogether just so that you're afraid people won't like you or they might get mad at you is complete neediness. And, don't do that. Don't avoid it. I'm not saying you have to be controversial, although I think you should be. It's certainly part of what I teach in my email players newsletter and system. But to avoid it altogether, to just not upset some one person or two people or a small part of your audience, it just shows neediness. And you're actually going to be turning off people you do want. Projecting your feelings and emotions, which is related to telling people they need to buy. Don't project how you're feeling onto your market. For example, people will like to do these things called goodwill emails. Oh, I've got an email here. I'm sending you this email today. There's nothing to buy. Don't worry. I'm just doing this, to show how great I am. Basically, is what you're saying. Even if you don't write that, you're projecting your emotions onto them. You're basically trying to show you're a nice guy or nice girl, and you're not just a salesperson. Which all it does is it comes off as neediness. They're on your list because they have a problem. They're not on your list so that you can supplicate to them and kiss their butts. They're on there because they have a problem. And all it is emotional doing these goodwill emails. It's all your emotions and your feelings projected onto them. And this is the analogy I like to use. Imagine that you have a burning, painful, razor blade-like urinary tract infection. When you go pee, it feels like razor blades are coming out. And it's agonizing. And it's tormenting you. And you go to the doctor. And the doctor gives you a prescription for this. It's going to give you some relief. And you hurry over to the pharmacy with your prescription that your doctor wrote for you. And the pharmacist says, oh, no. This is a goodwill day today. We're not here to sell you anything. In fact, you're not even allowed to buy from us right now. This is a goodwill thing because I need to show you that I'm not just trying to sell you. But here's some information on the problem you have, and just come back tomorrow. I mean, that may be a dramatic example, but that's basically what you're doing when you send a goodwill email out with no sales pitch or no link, or not even letting them know a product exists, just because you want to feel good about yourself. Again, that's projecting your feelings and emotions to them. They have a problem. They're on your list for a reason. It's total neediness. Apologizing. Nothing will make you needier than sending an email saying, I'm sorry for sending you this second email today, blah, 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 blah. Why are you apologizing? If you have something valuable that's going to help them, why are you apologizing? You should be if you're telling them something interesting and that's worth hearing, you shouldn't be apologizing for that. It comes off as weak and needy and pathetic. And then finally, getting defensive. If you write emails where you're getting defensive because somebody slighted you, or because somebody accused you of something or whatever, and I'm going to talk about this in one of these not very nice email secrets here, so I'll get more into this. But getting defensive just shows neediness. Why are you defensive? That just shows insecurity and neediness. And if you just get rid of these things, and any other thing that feels needy, I mean, there's probably millions of things you can do. These are just the common ones I've seen in emails. Just going through your emails and making sure you're not doing these things it's like advanced email marketing compared to what most people are doing. So it's something to think about. So what should you do instead? Instead of being needy, right? Instead of apologizing, instead of supplicating, instead of all this stuff. Well, you can start by not asking people to buy, and certainly not begging people to buy. And instead, you give them the opportunity to buy. It's a small little shift in thinking and in verbiage, but it makes a big difference. If you look at any of my emails, I don't really come and say, oh, would you please buy this? No, it's here's a link, and if you like to get these benefits I talked about, check it out more. There's more information here, and I send them to a sales letter or wherever I'm sending them. Don't ask them to buy. Give them the opportunity to buy. It's a huge difference in the two. Have the mindset that you're eating steak either way. I don't know who came up with this, but this is actually somebody once went through a whole bunch of sales letters and came up with these what they call clicks of the dial. And this is actually a phrase people sometimes use in old school sales letters. Hey, I'm eating steak whether you buy this or not. Now, you don't have to say these exact words, but letting them know that if they buy your $3.49 ebook, it's not really going to change your life at all, right? I mean, it's not. And that's the kind of mindset you have to have. It's like, I'm eating, so either whether they buy or not, it's okay. My life goes on. I'm good. I'm not dying. I got my health. Whatever it is, you actually probably have a pretty good life. Okay, hopefully. And and that's the way it goes. It's not going to bother you if they buy or not. Behave as if you don't need the sale. And really, it shouldn't even just be something you have to consciously do. You want to get to the point where you really don't need their sale. And I know that if you're listening to this and you're kind of in a position where you're broke and the wolves are at the door and all that, I understand that, believe me. But this is the time when you really have to fight that even more, because acting needy is just going to make it worse for you. You're more likely to make the sale if you don't act needy. And I'm not saying be a jerk. I'm not saying have an attitude or any of that. I don't think you should do any of that. But what I'm saying is you don't need their sale. There's plenty of people out there. The math is on your side. Always remember that the math is on your side. If you have something valuable that's going to help people, there is less supply of you than there is of people who want and need what you have. So the math is on your side. It's just a matter of getting in front of enough people. And when you have that mindset, you won't do needy things. Try to get them to tell you no. This is something the late great Jim Camp used to teach. And it's a thing. It's like actively trying to get someone to tell you no. And I know this sounds very strange, and it's not something you do as a tactic. It's not something you do with posturing and all this and trying to act tough and cool and all this. No, there are certain people that you probably don't want buying from you. And you should make sure that you fill your emails up with verbiage to let them know, look, this isn't for you if. Not every email has to do this. But for example, I've done emails where I make it very clear I don't want to deal with people who are like impulse opportunity mindset buyers. I don't want them. They make terrible customers. They do nothing to change their circumstances. They just bounce from one bright shiny object to the next. I am actually losing money by not appealing to them. I mean, I could probably make a lot more sales, but I don't want them because they're a pain in the butt. And I just don't want to be around that. I really had this belief that the social sciences is right in one thing where they say you really are the sum total of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Well, I consider my customers people I spend time with. Certainly I'm having a dialogue with them every day via email. Well, I don't want low-class jackass people buying from me. So I don't say these exact words, but my emails are and my other sales copy actively try to get them to go away. And what happens is sometimes you'll have a few people who, hopefully everyone goes away who you don't want, but you'll have some people who actually kind of changes the way they think because they realize that they're being this certain way and they don't want to be that way and they want to buy from you. It happens all the time. And it's a function of getting them to tell you no. It's anti-needy in every possible way. I mean, think about that. Trying to get someone to tell you no is anti-needy. It's the exact opposite. Finally, you want to make the skeleton dance. Now, if you've ever heard of this guy, he's an author, he's a sales trainer, and he's a speaker. His name is Barry Maher. And I know he's not really well known in like the copywriting world and all that, but he has this entire philosophy of selling that is a complete opposite of neediness. It works like crazy. It makes people believe and trust you much faster than they would otherwise because you really can't make the skeleton dance and lie. Not in a way that wouldn't just be obvious, at least. So it's kind of hard to lie doing this. So you might as well just tell the truth anyway. And that's the whole point of his philosophy. Well, he was inspired by George Bernard Shaw, who said, if you can't hide the family skeleton, you might as well make it dance. And so he does this with his selling. He actually he'll make a list of all the bad parts, all the drawbacks, all the flaws in his product or service that he's selling. And then he'll go one by one and say, well, how can I turn this into an actual reason to buy? And he does this. This is making the skeleton dance. It goes beyond damaging admissions, by the way, that like the David Ogilvy's and all that, they all pioneered that, which is great. I mean, damaging admissions, it's a great way to sell, actually, to admit when there's some flaw, there's something wrong. But this takes it to a whole new level. This is where you are taking flaws and saying, here's why you should buy. So, for example, if someone says, well, your price is too high. Why is your price so high? Well, yeah, it's high. Of course it's high. I mean, my prices are higher than everyone else's out there. But my clients, they happily pay them to me because I get so many results for them, they don't care. They're happy to pay them. In fact, I'm thinking of raising my prices. That's one way to deal with that. Or maybe your product has a lot of bad reviews. Maybe this is something like on Amazon or Yelp or something. Well, maybe you also have the most sales, right? So you say, yeah, we definitely have the highest number of bad reviews. We have the most 1-star reviews of anyone in our entire category. But here's why this is good for you. Because we also have the most customers. We have the most sales. Just by the law of numbers, we're going to have the most complaints just because of the sheer number of customers we have. And we've implemented systems in there so that you never have any risk. There's no way you can possibly lose using us, and here's why. And then maybe you would tell them about a guarantee or something. The point is you can make the skeleton dance, whatever it is. Look for flaws, actively look for flaws, and go ahead and admit them in your emails and then try to turn them into reasons to buy. It's an amazing way of thinking that hardly anyone's doing, especially in the copywriting world. Okay, not very nice email secret number 6. And this is exploiting haters. So you get people hating on you, sending you hate mail, and all that. Well, this is not something to worry about. This is something to actually enjoy and to look forward to, because when you know how to deal with it, you'll actually profit from it. It's money in the bank. It's almost like they're doing you a favor. I call them unpaid interns. I call anytime someone sends me hate mail, troll mail, whatever it is, they have instantly knighted themselves an unpaid intern for Settle LLC. They become one of my, and I appreciate their help. And I love the fact that they don't ask me to pay anything, and nor do I have to pay them anything. But the effect is it's like they're out there selling for me. And I'll give some examples of this so it makes sense. Not long ago, at the time of this recording at least, I got this email from someone who's he really got upset when he found out that I don't have a swipe file to give him. See, if you go to my website at bensettle.com, there's a tab at the top that says swipe file. And a lot of people might click that thinking, ooh, I'm going to get this stuff. I could swipe and steal and swipe and deploy and all these, copy and steal and can and clone and all this stuff that people say, that I guess sounds cool from the internet seminar pulpit, but, it's not going to make your copy any better. And this guy was viscerally mad at me. He was really angry. I mean, he filled the email with F-bombs and all this stuff, saying what a terrible person I am and F you this and F you that. I mean, just like, I've never seen anyone get this upset over something like this. I really didn't. So, of course, I turned that into an email. I took I didn't change anything. I took his exact words, posted an email. I said, I didn't name him or anything. I did not publicly name him or anything like that. I just said, I got this email from someone, and then I went through and addressed it. And I turned it into a little lesson, actually. And I mocked him a little bit and had some fun with him a little bit. I didn't get angry with him. I didn't try to insult him or anything like that. I just took the energy of what he sent me and used it against him. And the result was sales. That's how you deal with hate mail or insult mail. So every year I do this joint venture with my friend Michael Senoff. We're selling a product that revolves around the late great copywriter Gene Schwartz. And every year we make about $1,000 more each from this, both of us each, from this promotion. We've been doing that for 6 or 7 years, and every year it just gets better and better. Well, on one of the last times I did this promotion, we did almost 1,000 sales for a $20 product. So basically we split $20,000 amongst the two of us. I made a little under $10,000 just for reusing emails that I just use every year. So took me about 15 minutes to do it, and it's something you can do too if you want. If you find a promotion that works, reuse that promo once or twice a year. You'd be amazed. But anyway, so this guy sends me an email on the very last one. Now understand that I send 7 or 8 emails on the last day of the sale. And the very last email, he replies back saying, I'm really not that good. And, the only reason that he even is on my list is just because he likes to see examples of how not to email. And I thought, that's fine. I literally just made $10,000 profit reusing emails I've written 8 years ago. But let's take a look at what he said. So I reprinted his email. I did not name him, but I did reprint his email. I said, look, and the subject line was meet my newest intern. And then after his comment, I just put 7 or 8 points of what was going to happen now that he sent that to me. One, he was replying to the last email in a sequence, which is kind of funny because he's read I suck so bad, but he read all the emails. And, I told him how many sales we made and all that. It was just easily verified. If he wants to go to Michael Senoff, he certainly can. I mean, it's not a big deal to either of us. And I went through all that. His email is going to make me money, which it did. That email that day made me money. Sales because I reprinted his email and all of this. So I just went through these things. I just took it point by point and turned it into a reason to buy. That's how you create unpaid interns. Or bad reviews. So once I have this ebook on Kindle, and it's about email. And several years ago, this guy wrote a 1-star review for it. And in his 1-star review, he went out of his way to say, this is some of the best email information I've ever read. And then he started complaining about, for example, the fact that it's just an interview transcript, which it is. And he complained about how I don't have a table of contents and how it needs to be edited and all this stuff. And it's not like he had bad points or anything. It's not like he paid a fortune for this either, but whatever. So he, to me, seemed like he was not only kind of a mush cookie, but to me he was like kind of a troll too. So I called him, behold the Troll House Mush Cookie. So I reprinted his review word for word. I didn't change anything like that. And then I simply said, look, it's not that he's wrong. But here's the thing. I don't worry about that kind of stuff. Like if you're worried about a table of contents and not the actual contents themselves, I'm not the person to buy from. And I told the story about the boron letters. Now, I bought Gary Halbert's boron letters back in 2003. I did not have a lot of money at that time, and it cost $97, and it was mailed to me, to my doorstep. And if you've ever seen the original boron letters, it's handwritten letters he wrote his son while he was in prison. And so this whole book, there's no table of contents, needless to say. It's just like 25 letters, handwritten letters. It's written in his own handwriting. It's hard to even read a lot of it. And there's certainly no table of contents, and it's certainly not prettied up, and there's certainly no spell checking going on. And I said that book has probably made me tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years, especially if you combine with client work and all that. And I said, that's my whole point. Like, if that's more important to you to have a table of contents, then I just don't buy from me. It's okay. Well, long story short, the next day the guy sent me another email. He goes, look, you made a good point. I changed it to a 4-star review because I still think you should have it more cleaned up and all that. And I said, that's fair. But the point is I took his 1-star review and made money from it. And you can do the same thing. Anonymous troll comments, which, you get those sometimes. And I've gotten those before. And one time I did a subject line, El Bembo deserves a higher quality troll than this. And I basically just trolled the troll because they didn't say anything that made any sense. It's just that one of those things. And I really do want a higher quality troll because the low quality trolls is harder to make money from. And then finally, social media attacks. I once had a lady on social media complain, not to me directly, but in a group, in a private group. And then somebody sent me screenshots because I do have spies all over the place and really loyal customers and loyal subscribers, and I appreciate all of them, and they do this for me. And she was complaining about how I wouldn't unsubscribe her from my email list, which is just ridiculous. She was unsubscribed from the email list. I showed her proof of it, but then she still went and complained to social media how mean I was about it and all this, even though she attacked me for no reason and was wrong. And so I did a subject line, and so she walked out of my life forever. And I told the story of what happened, and I turned it into a reason to buy that day, and I did. This is how you create unpaid interns. You don't have to worry about hate mail and troll mail if you know how to deal with it. It's actually very easy to deal with, and it's very profitable. Now, there are some rules of thumb, though, if you're going to do this. If you're not going to follow these rules, I would say just ignore trolls and haters. Don't respond in any way. Don't write any emails or anything. And I mean that. You're better off being silent if you're not going to follow these rules of thumb. And this is over, almost 20 years of doing this. I can tell you I made all the mistakes. One, never get emotional. Okay, you cannot get emotional. You cannot let people get to you like this. If you do, you've already lost. You got to understand something. It's not personal usually from them. They're just angry people. They're having a bad day. They're taking it out on you, which is low class. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they should do it, but it's usually not personal. So to get emotional over someone you're never going to meet and who has really no power over you whatsoever is kind of silly. I'll give you a real life example. Not long ago, there was a rapper, a hip hop artist, and he used to be popular about 18, 19 years ago. He's not really much anymore. Now he just goes around calling anyone who doesn't like his music like white supremacists and all. It's kind of funny, actually. He just has the social justice line down. Is what he does. The social justice warrior thing. It's just very low class jackass, and so it is. Well, he was on Twitter, and he was calling one of my email player subscribers a bunch of names: white supremacist, Nazi, all the normal stuff that's out of the playbook, and just for disagreeing with him, by the way, about capitalism versus socialism. There was nothing about race or anything even in the talk. And this was on Twitter. And Turns out, and somehow I got roped into this. And then he started going after me, and I had fun with it. I turned him calling me a white supremacist into a sale, which I called the right supremacist sale, and I sold my Copy Slacker. I had a sale in honor of this guy, and I never got emotional about it, and I never got nasty, and I never tried to attack him. This is the next point. Never get a nasty or attack anyone. Just have fun with it. Take the energy that they're giving you and just use it to make sales. Well, needless to say, there was another one of my customers, and she is not white. She is Hispanic. She's obviously brown. There's nothing white about her, and she's Hispanic. And he started roping her into it, and he started calling her a white supremacist, which just made no sense whatsoever. And she started getting a little bit emotional, right? Because it's never happened to her before. And I said, look, don't let it get to you. I want you to use this to your advantage. And so she did, using what I taught her. She used it to advantage. She actually had fun with it. And she wrote an email to her list about it, and she ended up getting 3 new clients, and she grew her opt-in list by 10% and all this. You could, depending on when you're watching this, it's on our Twitters. It's on my Twitter, but it's this happened a long time ago. But I don't know how you would find it probably now, but this was a thing. People were actually watching this go on, and we were making money from this. And that's because, but the key is you can't get emotional, and you can't attack them. There's no reason to attack anybody, even if they're attacking you. What you're doing is you're just taking their energy and using it against them. Think of a third baseman. If you watch baseball, third base, someone hits a shot down the third base line. The third baseman doesn't just kind of casually stand in front of the ball, let it hit his mitt, pick it out of his mitt, and then throw the guy out at first base. No, he actually receives the ball with his mitt. He receives it into his body, uses that energy to actually throw the ball faster than he would normally, than if he was just standing still. It's probably harder for me to explain than you just to watch, but if you just go to YouTube and just type in third baseman shot down the third base line or something, you'll see this. That's all you're doing. Another rule of thumb is to avoid responding directly. I don't respond to any of my haters or trolls one-on-one, whether it be an email or on social media. I just don't do it. I'm not going to respond to them one-on-one. I'm not going to get caught into a pissing match. I'm just not going to do it. And I don't think you should either. In fact, here's another rule of thumb that I don't even have written down here. Never even get in a public spat with anyone who doesn't have a bigger audience than you. If they have a bigger audience than you, there might be some upsides to it actually. But if they don't, or if you don't even know who they are, then don't even bother. Just make an email out of it. Resist internalizing or taking anything personally. It's not personal, and it's not something you need to internalize. It's going to rattle you, especially if you've never been attacked and you've never been trolled. It's going to rattle you a few times. It will. It's okay. It's natural and normal, perfectly normal to get a little rattled, but just keep control of your emotions. Don't attack them back, but take whatever they say and turn it into an email. And that's why I say always be grateful. They are giving you a gift. It is an absolute gift that they're giving you here. It's not they think they're attacking you. They're whatever. It's a gift. They're making you money. How can you not be grateful for someone who's actually handing you money, basically? Something to think about. Okay. Finally, not very nice email secret number 7. Giving people options for thinking differently. Now, this is a mindset and a concept. I don't know who invented it or who coined it. I first heard it from the late comedian Patrice O'Neal. He used to talk about this. He was a great comedian because he would give people options for thinking differently, i.e., get you thinking differently about something that you had assumptions about before. So how does this beef up your email sales? Well, the first thing it does when you give people options for thinking differently, and that is just what it says, you're literally giving them an alternative point of view that they're not used to hearing and that maybe they hadn't considered before. It eliminates all indifference. And, indifference is the death of persuasion. There's nothing that'll kill your sales more than indifference. There's actually a very thin line between love and hate. Okay, there really is. And, it's emotions either way. But indifference, lukewarmness, this goes back even to the Bible times, right? If you ever read the book of Revelation, Jesus got on one of the churches in the book of Revelation. He said, look, I would rather you be hot or cold, but you're lukewarm. So I'm literally going to vomit you out. That's the verbiage. Well, that's because indifference does nobody any good. You got to make people ante up. So here's an example of eliminating indifference. In the town I live in, I used to, it's kind of a golfing town at the place I live currently. There's a lot of golfers here. There's a top 10 golf course, in the country here. And so there's a lot of caddies there. Well, one day I was this girl I used to date. Her and I were at this bar where a lot of caddies like to go. And we noticed this caddy sat next, he was sitting between two pretty attractive girls. And he was really floundering, trying to like keep conversation with them. We were just far enough away where we could kind of see what was going on and, and be able to discuss it without him even knowing. And so we were people watching, basically. And eventually I said, you know what he needs to do? And she goes, what? I go, and this was, by the way, this was like a week or two before Donald Trump was elected president in 2016. And I said, he should find out who they're voting for. And let's assume that they don't like Trump, right? A lot of people in this town at least didn't like Trump. And let's assume they didn't like Trump. He should say, you know what? That Trump had a point. And just leave it at that. And not argue with anyone necessarily, not get in a political debate, but just say, yeah, he had a point. And then describe whatever his point is, which would rattle someone who hates Trump, but it also gets the emotions flowing. There's no indifference at that point. And I bet he would have had a better chance of doing whatever he wanted to do with those girls. And so it is with anything. Indifference is the death of sale. And by giving people options for thinking differently, you remove it's impossible for them to be indifferent to you because basically you're elevating their thinking. Some of the best emails I've ever written have elevated someone's thinking. They got them thinking in a different way. In fact, the director Mel Gibson, who's had a few blockbuster movies, there was a documentary he was in I watched once. I don't know where you can find this. It used to be on Netflix, but they were interviewing a whole bunch of blockbuster directors. And he said this, like the 3 E's of movie making, that he goes, if a movie has these 3 elements, it's probably going to do, like a blockbuster, it's going to do really good. 1, it has to entertain, right? And I would say this all applies to email, by the way. It has to entertain. If you don't entertain people in a movie, they're going to walk out. Okay, that's just how it goes. I remember watching the 1992 version of the book adaptation into movies of Mice and Men, which is a very depressing story. And even though it had Gary Sinise in it and it had a lot of actual top name actors in it and very great acting, it was a really good movie. It's depressing at the end. Nobody wants to pay $7 or $8 or $10, whatever it was back then, to be depressed. Well, that's the first thing it has to do is entertain. Second, it has to educate. Make it, I say, informational, not necessarily like give away hard information, but you should give them a little bit of intellectual nourishment. And then the third thing is elevate. So it's entertain, educate, elevate. And this, if you can elevate someone's thinking about something, and this is, you're probably going to have a fan for life. Even if they don't agree with you, you'd be amazed how many people stick around just because they respect you, because you've got them thinking differently about something. It may take them a long time to come around and agree with you, if they ever do, but the fact that you elevated their thinking, got them thinking differently because you gave them options for thinking differently, can go a long way. You can convert anger into loyalty. Real life story. One of my favorite marketers, Russell Brunson. He was on my list apparently for a long time, and he said, and I got to meet him once. He came to a mastermind I was holding, and I remember he was an email player subscriber at the time. And he goes, Ben, and we had dinner that night together. We sat and we just started talking. And he goes, Ben, I used to hate you. I couldn't stand you. Oh, did I hate you? Now, if you know Russell Brunson, he's not like the hating type. So I'm like, whoa, like step back. He goes, now it's like, I love your stuff. He goes, in fact, I came to this mastermind really just to hang with you. And that was like the best compliment I could have gotten, from a person like that. Well, it's because I give options for thinking differently. He just didn't agree with a lot of stuff I was saying in my emails, and eventually he must have come around to agreeing with some of them, maybe not all of them, but he's an intellectually honest guy, and he came around to it. I can tell you right now, there are people who have elevated my thinking who I disagree with on a lot of stuff, but I still respect them, and I'll still buy from them because they've given me options for thinking differently. When you write emails that give people options for thinking differently, people like to read them. They actually want to. You become what Dan Kennedy famously said, a welcome guest and not an annoying pest. Most emails are annoying pests. Nobody wants to read them. They're boring. They're full of chest pounding and bragging, and there's really no point to them and all that. Or they're just basic, blatant sales pitches. But when you give people options for thinking differently, your emails stand out completely from everything else. And like I said, it will win the intellectually honest people to your side. And those tend to be really good long-term customers. I know in Russell Brunson's case, he still sends me customers. He still tells people about me at his seminars. I know this because people tell me. And I've even joked to him, I said, you're kind of like the gateway drug to me. Because a lot of these people probably wouldn't come to me normally through him. So something to think about. So let me give you some examples of what this means. I'm coming from this markets I've dealt with, okay, but this will give you an idea. So in internet marketing, for example, I will teach people about the futility of testing your opt-in rates. I'm not saying it's completely pointless, but you're much better off testing sales. Well, a lot of people have told me, I never thought of that before, Ben. I can tell you right now, I actually have I've had tests run where the highest opt-in squeeze page actually led to the least amount of sales, while the opt-in page with the least amount of opt-ins led to the most sales. But people would blindly, and word for word, I've caught people doing a swipe the one that got the most opt-ins, because at a glance it does look like the better page, but they're really getting the bottom of the barrel leads. And I'll teach this kind of stuff. That's giving people options for thinking differently. Or when I talk about, I don't really test open rates. I think open rates there is a time to do it. There's a few times you should do it. But for the most part, why people treat it like a video game, like, oh, I got my open rates up. Okay, well, how are your sales? Well, I don't know, because they're not testing their sales. Like this is, when you go to the bank, they don't ask you how many opens you got on your emails. They ask you how much sales you made. And that gives people in my market, where I teach email, options for thinking differently. In the dating market, I've written an email about why texting women in the morning is a bad idea for guys. And I can tell you, in that world, most of the dating people are saying, yes, you need to send them a good morning text, which is like the worst thing you can do. You talk about neediness and all that. It's just, talk about catfish bait. It's like the worst thing you do. So it gave people in that market options for thinking differently. In the prostate market, which I've written many emails for, saw palmetto is like the gold standard. Is what everybody thinks is the natural way to get rid of it. Patent beta sitosterol. Well, I say no. I think they're pointless. So I've written an email, for example, about how saw palmetto, or I call it, the subject line was prostate pills that'll turn you into a girl, because I think there's lots of evidence that saw palmetto might actually increase your estrogen rates and all this. Do their own research on that if you want. I'm just saying that's what I learned. Deep dive versus shallow dive surveys. My buddy Ryan Levesque teaches deep dive surveys, and he's brilliant at it. And to cold markets, I think it's great. But I do shallow dive surveys to my own list. Shallow dive is literally just asking, what are you buying right now? What's the last product you bought? And then I'll know what they're buying, what they're spending their money on. I'm not saying that what he's doing is wrong. I'm just saying I'm giving options for thinking differently. And so does with ignoring conversion rates, which is kind of pointless. Like people want to ask me, what's your conversion rate? It doesn't matter what mine are, because you're not me. You don't have my 18 years of being on Google. You don't have my list. You don't have my offer. You don't have my dynamics. You don't have my experience. You don't have my position. You don't have my brand and all this stuff that you can't duplicate those things. So it's pointless. Or in the weight loss niche, I would write emails about why running is bad for you, giving options for thinking differently. There was a long-running control ad with the subject, or the headline, "Get back on that couch," which I thought was just a superb headline. And I'm pretty sure that ran for a while. It was the exact opposite. It's like, hey, you want to be healthy? We can get back on that couch. And I don't remember what the point was to it, but they gave you options for thinking differently. And when I teach shaming, like I did at the event you saw, with the talk you saw, which is why you're watching this, is because you saw me. I taught the benefits of shaming. Or here's a Gary Bencivenga headline, "The Case Against Mutual Funds." To people who are using mutual funds, that was a fascinating read. Like they're thinking, oh, really? He gave them options for thinking differently. It's very powerful. So that's all. That finishes the last three of these secrets. I didn't have time to get to them during my talk. I apologize for that. But hopefully you've got your time's worth here. If you have not yet gone to bensettle.com and opted in, I'd encourage you to do it. It's free to opt in. You don't have to opt in if you go there, but if you do, I will give you the first issue of my prestigious Email Players newsletter, which is a print newsletter. It costs $97 a month. That's the actual retail cost, but I'll send you a PDF of the first issue. People have told me that they've made thousands of dollars just using that free issue, and multiple people have told me this, so it's not just some fluke. There's also on my site, there's well over 100 hours of audio training from all these podcast episodes I've done. I've done well over 200 podcast episodes. There's some video on there, some 200 pages of blog posts. It's all free, and that's at bensettle.com. It's a site that's read by people if you know them. Like Gary Bencivenga has given me a testimonial about my site and my emails, and Matt Fury and Brian Kurtz, and just Richard Armstrong, Carlene Anglade Cole, people I really have just the utmost respect for, A-list copywriters, A-list marketers, people that you may have heard and respect. They all tell me they read it. It's all free at bensettle.com.